Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to the fifth and final round of Swiss here for the Paradise Games 1K. This is Pioneer, of course, as you've been watching. We've got Pete on Sultai Delirium versus Nick on Dimir Inverter, and you know all that lovely hot damn scandal music we've been listening to all stream, Dylan?
Yep, it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, Pete is actually one of the artists behind
He's
that.
the lead singer, I believe.
Yeah, so you've been listening to his lovely voice. Music's excellent. Thanks to Pete for letting us use the music, obviously, and the rest of Hot Damn Scandal for sure. But anyway, this is definitely a win and in for top 8 here. Winner should be in, loser should be out.
Yep.
So
They're
clean and cut, nice winning in.
3-1.
Yep, clean cut, nice winning in here. So.
Take a quick talk about the standings before this
take a
match
look.
starts. At 3:01, we've got Jesse, Greg, Sabine, and Patrick. We've seen Jesse, Greg, and Patrick on stream.
Talked a little bit about the monstrosity in Sabian's hands.
And Sabian's match will come in the top 8, we're sure.
Yeah, we'll have to get it on
We've got to
camera.
flex that pile on you guys. And then we've got David, Creighton, Nick, and Pete all at 9 points. So Nick and Pete here facing off in the 9-point bracket. Whoever loses here, I don't think any 9 points make it into top 8.
It depends. The reason they're playing here is because there's a couple 7-pointers in Andrew and Edward.
Andrew and Edward at 7 points.
Which is with good breakers, which are threatening to overtake either of these players with a win. So they have to play essentially. Otherwise, if they draw, they're going to have the same 10 points and have worse breakers. So, and the 7-pointers aren't facing each other. So
Wow.
This
is a mess of math.
Yeah, it basically means that both 7-pointers are going to have both 7-pointers are likely to have a win and in.
Oh, the draws are against each other. That's
Yeah, exactly.
sick.
So, which is how they both ended up with 7 points. So, anyway, matchup starting off here: Sultai Delirium versus Inverter. This is kind of a classic, or has quickly become a classic here in Pioneer, as we'll see Pete cast a Satyr Wayfinder, Emrakul, and the Murderous Rider going to the bin here. Those are 2 big traverse targets that Pete will not have access to later in the games. That's pretty relevant.
Is there any recursion in this deck?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah. Pete
Pete's
is 3-1.
3-1.
Yes, this is a win and in for top 8 for both players here.
Nick playing some pretty Drago magic here. He's cast only and opt this game.
Yep.
He's got his $20 Guildgate in play.
Yeah, no joke. Here's an Uro from Pete. It'll sacrifice itself. He'll gain 3 life, draw a card, put an extra land into play. Though Pete's looking pretty cold to nice turn 4 Inverter, turn 5 kill you here.
Yeah.
So he's probably just hoping that Nick doesn't do it, because I feel like he's gonna die if he does. So
Like he's cycled that land. So looking at Nick's hand, I can hardly see it.
I definitely caught an Inverter. I've caught a Dig Through Time. I think it's pretty land heavy other than that. He
Yeah.
drew a Thoughtseize off the Fetid Pool cycle at end of turn there. So his hand improved quite a bit over the last couple of draw steps here, but I don't think he has a win condition here. So we're not going to see Inverter of Truce on this turn.
Here, we've got Pete with Nissa push land.
Yikes.
So, Nissa's getting ganked here, but push is pretty nice against Oracle, though with currently Nick's graveyard doesn't super matter.
Yeah, if you know about it, it's easy to play around.
Yeah, but it is nice for Pete to have that level of interaction.
Absolutely. The hidden best card in Pete's hand right now is Uro in his graveyard.
It's true. He's going to untap and slam it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very real clock. It's a very real threat. It is going to pressure Nick into taking game actions, so we'll likely see that coming here sooner rather than later. We'll see if Nick has any other action.
Nick is a mana off with this Dig Through Time, unfortunately.
Yeah, very sad for Nick. One short, 1 card short, 1 mana short.
Wayfinder was Pete's draw.
And it was. I think we're just going to see a nice escaped arrow here to start things off. Obviously, it lets us play an extra land, so that means that Pete will likely be able to escape the arrow plus deploy the Satyr Wayfinder on this turn. So it should be a relatively good turn from Pete here, actually.
With arrow in play, his card advantage is astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's going to win a long game, obviously, with the power of Uro, and the Dimir Inverter deck isn't particularly well equipped to deal with Uro. We'll see.
Yeah,
we see.
He's got this Fabled Passage.
Absolutely.
They play pushes.
Yep.
So it's not like he doesn't have a draw, but
Yeah, if he has a Fatal Push, he'll be able to Fatal Push the Uro with this Fabled Passage in play. I'd be surprised if Pete did anything other than just cast the Uro. I mean, even if you get your Uro Fatal pushed, right? Like, how sad are you really?
Not.
Like, we're not. Yeah, we're not sad. So, and Pete does have the requisite colors to do so. So
Looks like he's tanking on his second main.
He's thinking about it a little bit.
Shock this Overgrown Tomb. Oh, it was a judge call.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, so got confirmation there real quick what the judge call was about. The player drew a card, played an extra land, but did not gain the life off of the arrow trigger. Obviously, you cannot half resolve your triggers, and since that is all one trigger, judge
just change the life totals.
Deemed that the life totals, these are what the life totals are supposed to be. So nothing too crazy, happens all the time. It's easy to not fully resolve a trigger, but if you acknowledge the trigger and partially resolve it, the judge, especially if it's an easy fix such as a life total change, will definitely
repair game state.
Yeah, repair game state, especially when it's not super long ago. So here comes that Uro. So we'll gain the life, we'll draw the card, then we're going to cast ourselves a Satyr Wayfinder.
JVP Thoughtseize
into the bin, and a nice forest into hand for Pete. So now we'll see.
This deck looks pretty sweet.
Oh, Sultai Delirium?
Yeah.
Oh, it's really sweet.
Big fan.
Yeah, it's really, really sweet. Now we're going to see Nick crack that Fabled Passage here.
We'll see. From Pete's side, what are we looking for in terms of interaction here? Like, what is...
There's not a whole lot. You mostly have to hope that you have the Thoughtseize at the right time, and your opponent goes for it because you pressured him into going for it.
Looks like there's a land. So Drown the Lock, Island, Swamp, Dig Through Time, Inverter is Nick's hand.
Yeah, so he's probably unable to go for a kill on this turn. This is likely going to be a Dig Through Time turn here for Nick, where he's going to play a land, he's going to Dig Through Time. I was going to say he was probably going to hold up the Drown in the Lock on Pete's turn. Obviously, Drown in the Lock is really good against the Sultai Delirium deck because it revolves around filling its graveyard. Nick, I think, missed on win condition here, which is really bad for him. He has the Inverter, but he's lacking the Oracle or the Jason. I don't think he found one. So yeah he's just going to take Opt and a Fatal Push. That's a mega whiff as far as Dig Through Time is concerned, I think.
So Nick in a tough spot here. He's at 16. He's facing...
I don't... he fetched on upkeep.
Okay, he fetched on upkeep?
Yep.
Got it. All right, that's a big deal.
Yep. So get the Uro out of play. That's good. At least there's no clock really. That's another Satyr Wayfinder, I believe, was the draw.
Right. That's a clock, dude. What do you mean?
We've got Nissa though in hand for Pete. So.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah, the Nissa is a very real clock that will end the game rather soon. So
we get to play this Nissa. We get to play our land we get to play Wayfinder, find a land, play the land. Play the Uro, and then take up our Nissa and smash our opponent for 5?
I doubt we have I don't think we have enough cards. Oh, we have the Satyr Wayfinder, yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're short on blue mana currently to be able to do that.
Okay, so Nissa has... Well, if our Satyr Wayfinder finds us a breeding pool, that's not true.
That's very true, but, probably just going to start with the... just going to plus attack, and then go ahead and cast that. Anyway, we're thinking a little too much. Pete has a main board. Erebos' Intervention. Is that good? What about Scoos? Yes. Erebos' Intervention is definitely good. That's definitely a card that can surprise kill your opponent. However, it's significantly less good when your opponent already has, 6 lands in play. It's really, really good in the games where your opponent goes for the, weird, or not weird, but when your opponent goes for the turn 4 invert, turn 5 kill you games. It's really good there because you can just surprise exile their graveyard and then they have no cards in their deck and lose. It's less good when they have 6 mana in play and their plan was invert Oracle anyway, because then they don't need a deck to do it all in one turn. So it definitely can steal a game. Let's not pretend anything about that. It absolutely can steal you a game, but odds are, at this point, I don't think the Erebos' Intervention is going to win you the game.
And also, another thing about the inverted deck is there's no hate piece that just lets you beat it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about how the inverter deck is so effective, such that it ends up, mostly being. It ends up having hate pieces that are just make the deck awkward to go off with, and Scavenging Ooze definitely fills in the it makes it awkward.
Also, stopping your
category.
opponent from digs or timing is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of a notable play here. We saw Pete on this turn. He elected to not attack with a Nissaland,
Which I think is correct.
in order to be able to second main phase an Uro with the actual breeding pool by tapping it for green-blue, untapping it with Nissa, and then tapping the creature land for green-blue to escape the Uro. So we definitely have lethal next turn, so this is going to force Inverter of Truce out of Nick. Oh, and he drew the Jace.
Oh, he did. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, he had to draw the Jace that turn, otherwise he was going to have to just cast the Inverter of Truth and just, like, hope he could win.
That's not
With a 6/6, which was obviously never going to happen, yeah. But
So,
having drawn the Jace,
I think Nick could win this game. So he slams this.
I think Nick is likely to win this game.
Slams this Inverter, does the thing. He's only got Fatal Push Dig in his graveyard.
Yep, just the 2 cards means that the Jace will win us the game on our next
Unless
turn.
Pete, of course, draws the Thoughtseize. We've seen him die to that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where this lines up. And I mean, I talked a little bit about what Pete's plan is in this matchup, and it really is force your opponent to go off when they don't quite have everything they could want and
Disrupt them.
try and draw a Thoughtseize at the right time. That's really what it boils down to. You need to cast a Thoughtseize early to not die, and you need to cast a Thoughtseize now to not die. That's pretty much how the matchup plays out. It's a hard matchup to win in game 1 for Sultai Delirium. It sounds like Pete's made some good additions to his main deck in order to help the matchup with cards like Erebos as mentioned. But at this point, I think we're basically on Thoughtseize or bust. So I don't think we have lethal this turn.
And I like that Nick doesn't. Nick has his Drown Lock in his hand, and he's not casting it. He lives with his combat step because his Inverter gets to block.
Yeah, he gets to trade the Inverter with the Uro, and then he'll take 9 points of damage from the 2 Nissa lands plus the 3 copies of Satyr Wayfinder. So he can even eat a land instead and go to like 1. Yeah.
So Pete doesn't get to draw a card off this Uro trigger, which is nice. But
get some extra looks.
He's got like 2 cards in hand, I think, and he'll have a third. And the odds of it being double Thoughtseize or Thoughtseize interaction seem small.
Certainly.
I guess he has 4 cards in hand. It's Fatal Push.
At least 2 lands.
Something.
Yeah, I don't know what the last one is. And Nick goes ahead and makes that block here. He'll kill the Uro. Down to 5. Here comes Brain Maggot from Nick. He will counter that.
And that was the last card. Brain Maggot's sweet.
Yeah, and I think that Land Fatal Push means that... So
yeah, okay, there we go.
Yeah, so for what it's worth, Pete definitely should not have conceded then. Fatal Push actually says Oracle is not lethal.
But then you saw him go to pick say, oh wait, and then Nick show him the
Jace. Alrighty. Hopefully audio is back. Audio is back. Alright. So looks like Nick is offering a draw after winning game 1. That's interesting. I'm pretty sure that draw...
Oh, Nick offered to draw. Can't read that.
Nick offered to draw, and then Pete turned it down before the match because he did the math. I believe
he rejected it.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Because he did the math. I believe that neither player can draw.
I believe that,
Pete's breakers are really, really bad. If either 7-point player wins their match, then Pete will not make top 8. But when you're down a match or when you're down a game, it's a little rough. But I think that Pete needs to play. So
yeah, exactly.
So and it looks like Pete agrees. He's gonna play. He's gonna decide he has to play. All right, let's take a look at the sideboards here. We've got 1 Negate, 2 Mystical Dispute, a Disdainful Stroke, 3 Unmoored Ego, a Courser of Crufix, a Languish, 1 Assassin's Trophy, 2 Damping Sphere, a Massacre Girl, 1 Kalitas, Trader of Get, and 1 Hostage Taker. What sounds good here?
All right. So Mystical Disputes, again, snap it off. 3 Unmoored Ego are insane in this matchup. That card's pretty unreasonable.
Let's see. We've got...
James is free to join.
So we've got... Negate the Mystical Disputes are definitely good. Hello, James.
Hello, James.
Welcome.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Thanks for joining us. We're looking at the sideboards here. We're talking about Pete. So Pete's got the Negate, the 2 Mystical Disputes. Those are certainly good. The Disdainful Stroke absolutely coming in. The 3 Unmoored Egos are definitely quite good as well.
Yeah.
Other than that, not super into anything that's going on here. Let's take a look at Nick's sideboard. We've got a Murderous Rider, 3 Mystical Dispute, an Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, a Liliana the Last Hope, 2 Kalitas Trader of Get, 2 Legion's End, a Cry of the Carnarium, 1 Jace Vryn's Prodigy, 2 Damping Sphere, and a Narset Parter of Veils. What sounds good here?
I'm pretty in on the Mystical Disputes again. The Ashiok seems okay. I kind of like this Narset. Is that unreasonable?
Absolutely not.
No.
It's very good against Sultai
Narset's
Delirium.
Sick. And on this Narset.
Yeah, it shuts down Uro pretty effectively.
Yeah.
As well as dealing with Flip Jace very well. There's a lot of cards that say draw cards, just kind of incidentally in this Sultai Delirium deck.
And I could see Kalitas being rather dope. I'm aware that Nick doesn't have, like, the most, like, removal, but the Graveyard Shenanigans deck will get put in its place from this 3-4.
There's some things that you need to think about when you're sideboarding. The biggest one is that you need to try and kill Uro, because Uro's the card that forces you to take action before you want to. That being said, I like the Murderous Rider quite a bit. That one probably needs to come in. For similar reasons. The Jace Vryn's Prodigy seems excellent. Your opponent's going to be trimming on their Fatal Pushes for sure. So you definitely want to be bringing that in. Notably, it looks like Nick very short on win conditions that are not the combo here, so he's got to be pretty worried about Unmordigo out of the Delirium
Which is
deck.
another reason why I like this Kalitas.
Yeah, so we probably are forced into bringing the Ashiok Nightmare Weaver in, and the Kalitas maybe as well. So that seems reasonable to me. The Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, I'm not crazy about in the matchup by any means. There are some good hits on Pete's side, but additionally, you just aren't going to have the creatures to really protect it in a reasonable game, so it's probably just going to get hit and die. But also, I mean, when you do need a plan B when you get Unmordigoed. You don't want to just concede. So
I don't know. That's kind of my line.
It's not a good one. It's not a good one. Like, you've got Mystical Disputes and like some Censors and some Drown in the Locks, but that is not a great line, I must confess. So, looks like players have decided on their sideboarding here. So I do think that this game, or that this matchup, gets much better for Pete post-board.
Yeah, I believe so as well. He has actual haymakers.
Yeah, I actually was playing this matchup, this exact matchup with Pete in F&M this week. I'm doing some practicing for the tournament. Obviously, I'm not playing the tournament, but he was happy to get the games in, and I'm pretty stoked to play Inverter any chance I get, so I snapped it off. And yeah, the matches are close. They're pretty hard. I definitely feel like Inverter's favored because, like I said, game one revolves around like, well, I've got this thing. Did you draw the Thoughtseize right now?
Yeah, and those yourself had game one matters a lot for the match.
And those are the like scenarios where they put you into that situation, right? And like those are the bad ones. Those are the ones you can lose. The situations where you like invert your deck and your deck is like Thoughtseize, or like Thoughtseize, Thassa's Oracle, so you can just like never lose, or just like really insane, and you have like extra protection and all that. You can make sure you have the Thoughtseize backup every time you're
going to
combo.
The amount of lines in Inverter are unreal.
Ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's
very, very fun.
Very, very hard, very, very fun. So, looks like Pete's going to keep his 7-card hand here in game number 2. Nick forced to take a mulligan. So, we'll have to see.
As Jesse showed off in round 2, the deck has a crazy high skill cap, and yeah, he really outplayed his opponents.
Yeah, he did what he had to do. He drew the right cards when he needed to draw them, and he played the card the cards right when he drew them. So
that game 1 was very well played by him.
Excellently, yes. 6 cards coming off the top here for Nick. Take a look, see if this one's any better. This hand looks like
there's an Ashiok.
Not great to me, to be honest, but there is that Ashiok.
I think this hand's reasonable. It looks slow.
Yeah, I think it's a keep.
This matchup is slow.
I think it's a keep for sure, but I don't love it.
We're gonna shock Thoughtseize here.
Yeah, so we'll get a nice good look at it.
That hand's nice. All right, it's got a Drown in the Lock. It's got the Ashiok. It's got a Mystical Dispute.
It's fine. So we've got Ashiok, Mystical Dispute, Dig Through Time.
Takes the Ashiok. He doesn't want that anywhere near his board state.
Yep, so pretty easy hand. He's going to be left with Swamp, Drown, Catacomb, Dig Through Time, Mystical Dispute, and a Fabled Passage. So
I thought I saw a Drown Lock in there, but I was clearly wrong.
Yeah, certainly. So we've got a fine hand here. We're well away from Dig Through Time, though. That is going to be kind of the end goal with this hand. And in the meantime, we're going to try and Mystical Dispute an Uro to not die.
Yeah.
in the meantime. So we'll see how that plan goes. It may or may not work out for Nick. He's going to play Fabled Passage on turn number 1. I agree with this. Means that we will not be able to Mystical Dispute Jace Vryn's Prodigy, but that could be bad.
It doesn't look like it's a pro.
Oh, hello, Gavin. How's it going?
I was gonna guess Noble before he typed that second part.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, Alex in the chat.
Yeah, that's my Twitch. That's my Twitch account. Gavin's on my computer at my apartment. Sick. All right, here's the island. Just a Satyr Wayfinder here for Pete. It does mill over an Uro, though, of note. Very relevant. Yeah.
Insanely relevant.
Very, very relevant. He's only got 3 cards in the bin that he can exile at current, but obviously this Sultai Delirium deck, very proficient at putting cards into the graveyard. There's an Opt off the top of the deck for Nick. That's one of the best draws in his deck, I think.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Dig Through Time looks a lot better now.
Looks a lot more castable, yeah.
Also, Pete's 2-mana 1/1 that drew him 2 cards. It's kind of unreasonable.
Yeah, it looks good. That's for sure. Here's an attack for 1. It'll put Nick down to 19. It's going to go ahead and shock.
Is there another Uro in his hand? Is that what I'm seeing?
Seems very likely. No, just a tireless tracker. So this
just
was
a tracker.
Yeah, get this one under Mystical Dispute here. That's pretty nice. Does Pete next turn? We're probably going to try and jam our Uro into play, and it's going to get Mystical Disputed, and like that's
Whatever.
fine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's mostly what we've signed up for here.
The dream scenario, I think, is play our Fabled Passage, sack both our clues, like crunch you for 6.
That's a
race.
nice line if that's one we have available to us.
There's a Jace Field of Mysteries off the top from Nick.
Yeah, Nick's hand getting significantly better here as we progress on with the game.
What's he looking like casting here? He showed out. He
doubt
flexes
it's
his
anything.
swamp and passed.
Yeah, it's just going to be hold up Mystical Dispute this turn here for Nick. And now, yeah, sure enough, we're going to play this Fabled Passage. And yeah, I mean, Pete could easily be on plan clue, crack both of them, hit you for 6 here. And it looks like he might just be doing that.
Lands.
That's not great.
Well, we get to divination here.
That's true. a little bit of glimmer of genius.
Yeah. With upside.
Well, we're cashing in our Scry 2 and our 2 energy for 2 power.
Oh yeah, here's the line. He knows there's a Mystical Dispute, and he doesn't want to even.
Nope, none of that. Yeah,
not even gonna test it.
Yeah.
Deal with this permanent first.
I'm such a fish. Why didn't I play Sultai? All right, Gavin. We all tried to tell you to play Sultai.
Yeah, we really all did.
We all did.
Apparently, you weren't too lazy either, switching accounts on us.
Yeah.
Trying to bamboozle us like that.
Oh my goodness, what a prank!
What a prank. He's
right.
just joshing us. That's shrimp.
Looks like he just drew 1.
Yeah.
And is holding up maybe something or maybe nothing.
Maybe nothing.
Interesting.
I know when I played Nick last round, I kept shocking for no reason because life totals were irrelevant.
They are very irrelevant.
And it made him think a lot more. It's like, dude, why are you shocking? I'm like, I drew good cards.
Alrighty, so we've got
Grizzly
Nissa
Salvage
and a
was what
Grizzly
he did.
Salvage, and he just lets the Thoughtseize resolve. That makes sense to me. I mean, Nick's probably just gonna have to take the Nissa here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Grizzly Salvage does also represent an Uro, more or less.
I don't even want to cast it. I just want to sack another clue.
I actually think that he's supposed to take Grizzly Salvage here.
Really?
Crazy enough, yeah. If we take the Grizzly Salvage, then our opponent's either casting Uro or Nissa next turn. We can Mystical Dispute either. So that lets us have a nice little tempo play here. But now our opponent's just going to get to cast this Grizzly Salvage, fill their graveyard. And granted, he's still going to be casting probably just Uro next turn, but he also could just like get a Tireless Tracker or Scavenging Ooze or something here.
Oh, there's a Scoose.
JVP Scavenging Ooze, and then now we're a little bit concerned about double spell turns.
Yeah, now he's gonna grab the Scoose. This makes everything a little tougher for Nick.
Yeah, I think Pete's quite far ahead this game.
Yeah, so Pete gets to go land Scoose, play around Dispute again.
Yep.
And then he's got 3 green sources and another in his hand. So he gets to go like untap land, eat your whole graveyard.
Yeah, and let's not
this
forget
is
that Pete
also
knows about that
the
dig through time.
So at end
in
step
Nick's
here,
hand.
he should eat 2 cards and leave the dig through time uncastable. Oh, he did not do that.
Yeah, so got some people in chat asking about the top 8. Current locked up for top 8 is Jesse playing Blue-Black Inverter, Greg playing Lotus Breach, Patrick playing Mono Red, and Sabian playing this Indomitable Creativity
Boros nonsense.
wild combo deck. So
Yeah.
those are the 4 players that are locked for top 8. Any of the other players on 9-pointers could theoretically be bumped, but I think there's a couple that are probably locked as well. That being said, I don't know the results of their match at all. So, we've got an end step opt here from Nick, or is this a main phase opt? Excuse me. I think
just pays up his cards.
Yeah, he's just done here. I mean, he's so dead. Yeah,
Yeah, he's unreasonably dead.
he's so dead. I can't say I blame him there. So, all right.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go to game 3. Is there any cards that we saw from Pete or from Nick that would leave any of these cards we want boarded against?
Yeah, so Nick definitely did not see any copies of Unmoored Ego. That one's pretty important, certainly. So I think, if he was maybe boarding with that in mind and then didn't see any in game 2, maybe he'll think he doesn't have them, or maybe he think he doesn't have that many and he can try and play with them on the stack.
But really, Pete's got nearly a playset.
Yeah, but Pete's got 3, and I'm sure they're all in his deck. So
Yeah.
that's one. He still hasn't seen that Erebos' intervention, so that's
like
potential blowout here in game 3 we
Like
got to
Pete
be aware
just
of.
changed a card. Maybe he's bringing in the Disdainful Stroke if you didn't have it in, or the Negate if you didn't have that in.
Pretty common play for like little one or two card switches between play draw. I'm a big fan of boarding out a land on the draw because I'm an absolute greed monster. I do it in way too many decks. Like there's some where I feel like the math is about right. Mostly they're like the creature tempo decks. Like in Modern, I'm thinking decks like Humans, Merfolk from Age Past,
Or like Legacy Delver.
Legacy Delver plays like 14 lands to begin with, so I don't do it with that one. That one's just too unreasonable. But it's the decks that have like 21 or 22 lands. So on the draw, it actually does the math about even out, but it makes the keeping hands a little harder. Regardless, that trend has gotten way too aggressive, and I just do it way too much nowadays. I'm gonna be honest. Whenever I don't know what the last card to board out is, I'm like,
It's just a land.
yeah, I'll just take out the worst land of my deck. It's fine. It's fine.
All right, so we're going to game 3 here. Nick should be on the play.
Do I do it more or less than Gavin advocates for playing Mono Blue Tron? I think I take out a land on the draw more than you advocate for playing Mono
That's
Blue Tron.
insane. You're lying.
I mean, Gavin doesn't talk about advocate for Mono Blue Tron every match, so
It does it every tournament, though.
yeah, but I do it multiple times a tournament, so that's an over-exaggeration. I don't literally do it every match, but I probably do it at least twice a tournament or whatever, maybe 2 or 3 times a tournament. All right, game number 3 here. Got Nick on the play here for this one. Hopefully you can find a little bit better hand than in the last game. That one was pretty
He's really
weak.
hoping for disruption into Pete's Unmoored Ego in his starting 7.
Yeah, we need to not die to Unmoored Ego. That's step 1.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are quite a few hoops that need to be jumped through to not die to Unmoored Ego. You can Thoughtseize it the first time or whatever. That's totally fine.
He's got disputes for it.
Yeah, sometimes there's a Jace Vryn's Prodigy that comes down later, and then the game gets really awkward when you're like, oh, I'm getting Unmoored Ego next turn. Well, that sucks.
Looking at 2 inverters, Jace Oracle.
Yeah, you're like, I guess I'm playing this, and then it gets really awkward. But I've even had a game where an Inverter opponent cast Inverter, and then I won the game by Teferi unsummoning an Inverter of Truth, and then Unmoored Egoing the Inverter of Truth. To have them deck themselves because they had 2 inverters in their hand that we knew about, which was pretty sweet. So
Talk about unreasonable. How do I lose?
alrighty.
All right, so here we are. Nick's hand looks pretty good. There's some spells and there's some lands.
Yeah, this one looks a little bit better than the ones in the past. He's going to start off with a tapped choked
there's a
estuary.
Thoughtseize off the top for Pete.
Yeah, always a good
Always
place.
had it.
Yeah. And now we'll get a full look at Nick's 7-card hand.
Just mostly lands and uncastables.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. You know, It's not really great or anything. It's got a Drowned Catacomb, a couple Fabled Passages, Inverter Jace, and a Hero's Downfall. So
Pretty into taking this Jace and just putting it in the uncastable zone.
yeah, I like taking this Jace. You mean the graveyard
No,
in the
uncastable.
uncastable zone? I agree.
they're
Pete
definitely
does not agree.
castables.
Yeah.
They're definitely castables in that zone.
Well, it might be uncastable for Nick. It's certainly not uncastable for Pete. But
Just Inverter, get it back.
that's fair.
That was my, round 3.
All right, Censor off the top here
Oh, that's pretty good.
for Nick, and he goes ahead and plays the Fabled Passage.
He's
So
gonna
he's.
play right into this.
I mean, he doesn't have it. He can't cast
No,
it.
he just
under-
play right into it.
Okay.
He just played right into it.
Yeah, he's going to play into it probably, but it's not going to be good
Pete,
this
the
turn.
madman playing into Censor.
That he didn't see.
Otherwise known as playing on curve. Pete playing good clean magic over here.
Difference between the real good ones and the pros, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Play one turn behind curve always. Don't want to get got by your opponent's 2-mana spell when they have 1 mana up.
Sick.
Sick. Nick here, I really feel like
Ooh, Thoughtseize off the top.
oh, that's pretty good. I was gonna say he needs to do something to
Thoughtseize off
pressure
the
his
top.
opponent.
He needs to pressure his opponent. I absolutely agree. So without pressure, just a 1/1 for 2 here from Pete. The card is pretty mediocre in the matchup. It does a thing that you need for your deck to function. So obviously, its position is justified, but it really doesn't provide a clock in this matchup, and the clock is very important for Pete. I mean, you really are the aggro deck here. You are going to lose eventually, so you have to win first. So here we see an Uro. Nick not willing to censor the Uro. He's just happy to keep the censor in his hand here, which is definitely interesting.
Yeah, so Pete can't cast the arrow next turn, and if he can, he gets to play. Yeah, I like casting our censor there. I think that's
Censor
a
only
nice.
gets worse as the time goes
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely, especially because the
after
Uro
resolves.
puts an extra land into play. Granted, the Sultai Delirium deck is very good at spending all of its mana every turn, so you're usually going to be able to tag a target even late into the game. And, it doesn't look like Nick's hand is all that full, so he's probably going to be able to find a target at some point here. So,
Oh, but now with the Thoughtseize, it's castable.
taking a look here at the hand,
So Dispute,
From Pete.
Murderous Rider, Overgrown Tomb.
Fabled Passage, and Nissa Who Shakes the World. So that Nissa Who Shakes the World looks like a prime target for Censor.
Yeah, it really does.
So I'm probably leaving my opponent with that, and maybe Pete can sniff it out. I mean,
Yeah,
Nissa's
I'm pretty into
clearly
taking-
the best card in our hand. If we take this Murderous Rider or something, maybe Pete's, flags are going to go off like, wait a second, is he going to cast a Jace this turn? Next turn, this turn? He didn't cast anything? Really? What the hell's going on here?
Take this Dispute and just ship it back and hope your opponent doesn't big brain you by playing the Uro in his graveyard that's castable now.
Yeah, or something along those lines. So definitely an interesting position here. There's also an argument to be made for not getting cute and just taking the Nissa.
Yeah. I feel like Nick might have to get cute based off what his hand is and the levels of interaction Pete has in his deck and can draw at any point.
Absolutely.
So I think getting the percentage points of cute plays might just be necessary because Nick needs all the turns he can get right now to find a way to combo his opponent.
Yeah, he's still lacking the combo pieces he needs here. And granted, he does also, if he can, try and get the cute play, and then if his opponent sniffs it out, he can always just cycle or whatever, and then that's not that bad or anything. But he does take the Mystical Dispute here. So Nick is going for trying to snipe the Nissa here with the Censor. And that would be very good if he manages to do it.
That would be insane.
It's also worth noting that Pete knows about a Hero's Downfall in Nick's hand.
It's true.
So that's probably a reason that he could consider justifying, what happened.
Was that the top there? Was that a Thoughtseize?
I believe so.
Ooh.
That's a good one. But I expect
Yeah.
Pete to just cast this
Yeah.
up.
I'm actually...
You could do Thoughtseize Uro this turn. That
if I
seems
was
quite
Pete,
good.
I think I would rather... So, I think I'd rather just play, land Uro and then, I guess Thoughtseizing first is probably right if you're playing around something because I want to shock Uro and then play Thoughtseize, because that plays around Drown the Lock. Because he hasn't seen Censor all game, all match.
Sure, Drown in the Lock's a reasonable card to play around here as well. Granted, the Thoughtseizes also do get better later on in the game. We talked a lot about how you need to have Thoughtseizes at key times.
Pete might put the Shockland into play tapped. No, he's gonna play the Fabled Passage. Okay.
Yeah, it's this is a tough turn for sure.
It certainly
for
is.
Pete. So looks like he's gonna start with Fabled Passage.
Yeah, it looks like he's going for the Nissa. That's what I'd call this.
Seems likely.
Yeah.
He also could just be playing around Censor.
Oh, this is weird. He grabs Island.
Basic Island.
He wants to play his Nissa.
Yeah. I mean, we do need extra blue sources here. When we want to be escaping Uro, we need green, green, blue, blue, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So having access to triple blue in a turn.
But there was a breeding pool in his hand, right? That's the shock in his hand?
It was over to him, I believe.
Okay, so he is going to escape this Uro.
Seems likely to me. And then there's the interesting decision of, is he supposed to cast Thoughtseize on this turn? And it looks like he decides no, as he's going to go ahead and just tap out of his black mana. And I agree, actually. I think that just cast Uro this turn is quite good. You aren't going to get got by Censor. You are going to save your Thoughtseize for a later point. You know, after your opponent casts like Inverter of Truth or something, getting to Thoughtseize them is usually absurd. So save the actual really important card for later. And I think Pete more or less successfully sniffed out this Censor. You know, whether or not he thought about specifically Censor.
Well, Drown in the Lock or Censor. This plays around both of them.
Yeah, exactly. So Drown in the Lock and or Censor basically got played around here.
That's why he didn't. That's why I think he didn't have a black man up, because that doesn't play around like either of those, and specifically probably the Drown in the Lock he was thinking about.
All right, so
was that trigger on the stack? Or
that is trigger on the stack. Hero's Downfall, which is definitely tight timing here from Nick. You don't want your opponent to draw a Mystical Dispute or something. Not that Mystical Dispute can take out a.
He shocks in the Overgrown Tomb, and now he's gonna go for the Thoughtseize.
Possible. We'll see. I like I said, I actually really enjoy not casting Thoughtseize on this turn, and just getting it for a later point. But if we want to fuel our graveyard and he actually
maybe he's like
just
holding up Grizzly Salvage literally or figuratively.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how Pete played this turn quite a bit. So, Nick taking a look at the graveyard here. Obviously, the Inverter player's graveyard, one of the most important resources for both players to manage in the game. A lot of time you can pick spots against Inverter that are really interesting, because you're like, well, this is a bad interaction for me, but if you're interacting with me, you're putting 3 cards in your graveyard and then you can't kill me. So like there's a lot of like weird stuff like that where you're thinking like, well, if on end step you if I'm casting this and you're casting Drown in the Lock to counter it, like that's fine, because you put a card in your graveyard and then you can't kill me, or I know you don't have a dig through time or whatever. And every time they put a card in their graveyard, their like combo kill pieces goes up a little bit, because they just increasingly more need to have the card dig through time to be able to kill you. So there's a lot of times where you look at your opponents with like hand of 4 cards and you're like, all right, well, you need to have interaction spell followed by dig through time on my end step followed by untap, like Inverter Oracle, and that's really what you need to have. And once you start thinking about it in that way, there's a lot more interesting spots and lines where you can find cool places to kind of outplay your opponent playing Inverter or whatever. So
is Nick just slamming an Inverter here?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Erebos' Intervention.
Oh.
He concedes. Oh man, I mentioned the Erebos' Intervention blowout,
and then we got there,
and we